Sakaris and Price for Monday, February the 2nd, 2026. We're a presentation of Bet365, and we're coming to you from the Pacific Toyota Dealers Studio here at the historic Wall Center. Visit shoptoyota.ca or your local Pacific Toyota dealer today. I'm Blake Price. He's Jeff Paterson. You'll periodically hear from a four-time Juno Net-Grammy award-winning producer in Mike Rogerson. He's hitting switches and conducting things. Do you have Grammy envy, Mike, after watching the festivities last night?
I am over on the Grammys still. I have more chance of making this Canucks team, I think.
He's in the back room, though. His ode to Biebs. He's just in his boxers back there.
I thought it was a strange choice.
It was odd, yeah, but hey.
No accounting for taste.
Is Cher still speaking?
She's wandering. I watched more Grammys last night than I think the last 20 years combined because my daughter wanted to watch. So
our family was on the floor rolling at Cher. Like, they made the big build-up about 18 years since she's been on the Grammy stage. I
know why.
Exactly.
Having to call her back. And then she wanted to be there up the Luther Vandross one. No, the song is called Luther. Oh, my goodness. And also comes... Cher does her appearance the day before, because today is now Groundhog Day. If you remember from the movie, I Got You, Babe, figured prominently.
Right, yeah.
Over and over again. The jokes for Groundhog Day would be a lot easier for Canucks fans if they had suffered another feeble loss on Saturday, but it was a pretty tight affair. More on that coming up in a little bit. But because we are here to bring you all the news, we should tell you the Groundhogs are dueling on either side of the border. Wiarton Willie in Ontario, because this is the news that they need. It's so damn cold there. Early spring was the prediction from the Canadian varmint. Punxsutawney Phil, star of Groundhog Day, starring Bill Murray, different rodent, granted. He's past the one from that movie, but he's still... His namesake carries on. Punxsutawney Phil in Pennsylvania, 6 more weeks of winter. So we have all bases covered.
Who's got the better track record? Do we know? What do the analytics say?
I don't. Natural Stat Trick did not have that posted.
Okay.
I don't know who's a better play generator, Punxsutawney Phil or Wiarton Willie, but somebody's going to prove to be right here after all is said and done. We're going to start with a dog, not a groundhog. Yellow Dog. Our daily poll question brought to you by Yellow Dog Brewing, Yellow Dog Spirits, Foolish Wine, and Neighborhood Brewing. After the beautiful goal on Saturday, and it was a beauty, will Jonathan Lekkerimäki turn into a 30-goal scorer in the NHL? We haven't put a time period on this, and we don't mean it has to be a 30-goal scorer, not a 50-goal scorer. I think if you are a 50-goal scorer, you've at least passed the 30-goal scorer. So you don't have to see that as a cap necessarily. That's not how I read it, at least. But will he at least get to a 30-goal scorer in the National Hockey League? Voting, of course, on the S&P accounts on Twitter and YouTube. Jeff, what do you think?
Well, I think he has to if this rebuild is going to take hold. And not that he is the key piece of the rebuild, but somebody's got to score the goals. And we hear that this management group believes that they've got some pieces already in the fold. I would think that Lekkerimaki is one of those pieces, a first-round draft pick, a guy that was drafted where he was on his goal-scoring pedigree. The shot is undeniable. We saw it on Saturday night. But this also speaks to the quality of centers that he has to play with. And right now, that's been really the biggest issue for the Vancouver Canucks all season. I think we know that. We don't have to relitigate all the issues with all the wingers on this hockey club, but any criticism of any winger has to come with the qualifier that most of these guys have been saddled with Lucas Reichel or David Kampf or, Max Aston's got 2 assists on the season. There isn't a whole lot of playmaking there. Yep. So, yeah, I mean, there is a little bit of heat on Lekkerimaki himself, but on the organization to make it happen, I'm going to say yes. I think that there's enough pedigree there that he should be able to get to 30 goals. Now, we said all those same things about Brock Besser for so many years.
That's the thing.
That's the caveat, that Brock Besser burst onto the scenes, scored in his NHL debut, had 4 goals in his first 9 games at the tail end of that season, and then had a 29-goal rookie season. Like, that's how a goal scorer does it. Lekkerimaki has not done anything close to that at the National Hockey League level yet. So he's undersized and not particularly fleet of foot. There's challenges ahead for him. But that shot is undeniable.
And that's the Brock Besser comparison is a huge one, because as much as you might want to think in your heart of hearts, deep down in your gut, Brock Besser's a 30-goal scorer. He's done it, but I wouldn't qualify Brock Besser as a 30-goal scorer. I would not describe him as a 30-goal scorer.
Never had a season where he finished in the 30s.
No, exactly.
He went from 29 as a rookie to 40. And 40 is now looking like the outlier.
Right.
But he did get to 30 once.
And I think because of those paces, he's had 30-goal pace. Yep. But I wouldn't I think Brock Besser is a 25-goal scorer in my brain more than anything else.
But if this team is going to get where it gets, and I'm not saying that Lekkerimaki has to be the leading goal scorer when the rebuild is, when they've come out on the other side, but we've seen it, that you need the Army. You need Lekkerimaki to be a 30-goal scorer. You need Gavin McKenna, if they end up drafting him, to pan out and become a star in this league. And then you need a whole lot more. And so, yeah, I mean, I think I want it to happen for the kid. I'm going to believe that it will happen, but just saying it doesn't make it so. And it's going to be interesting to chart his progress here over the next bunch of years.
He looks so good at the AHL level. You just wonder if that speed is there. We'll talk about that again in a second here to make it happen at the NHL level. I mentioned Neighborhood Brewing as part of the Yellow Dog umbrella. They've got the Peach City Sour. This would go more with the Wyerton Willie prediction of an early spring. The sours to me are sunny weather sort of thing. They produce the peaches, of course, millions of peaches. Peaches for me, peaches for you in the Okanagan. That's why they were so inspired. It's a sour wheat ale from Neighborhood Brewing, bursting with tropical fruit flavors, balanced with a touch of hops for a little je ne sais quoi. Look out, there's peaches for you, there's peaches for me. Peaches for president from Neighborhood Brewing, the Peach City Sour, coming to your fridge in the not-too-distant future.
I thought you were going to say the fan base was a little sour with the deployment of Jonathan Lekkerimäki.
Which brings us to our top story, brought to you by Pacific Blue Cross. Thank you for the tee-up. See, that's a Liam Öhgren sort of setup for a Jonathan Lekkerimäki goal. And those two, adding to the deployment debate, the people are speaking. And, Jeff, no shifts in the last 9 minutes or overtime for Jonathan Lekkerimäki. Ratu and Lekkerimäki both at the bottom of Canucks ice time, shootouts, no kids. But it's all amidst the backdrop, though, of we want to lose, but can we see our players doing well? Like, it's a narrow to maybe medium path of kids having success, showing that they're good, but don't help us too much, don't win. Is it possible for the fans to have their cake and eat it too here?
Well, I have trouble with Jonathan Lekkerimäki getting one 25-second shift over the final 12 minutes of the third period in a 2-all tie in a game in which he's already scored. Now, again, the Tankists don't want him to score again and break the 2-all tie. I understand that. But Adam Foote was asked about it after the game, and he talked about he'll get there, but there's still some defensive deficiencies. And they were on display, too, on the first Leafs goal. Lekkerimäki was out there and maybe a shade slow to get to his man. And this isn't me saying that Jonathan Lekkerimäki has to lead the Canucks in ice time in the third period and in overtime, but you're telling me you can't find 2 shifts over the final 12 minutes? You can't find a shift in overtime, and I get that overtime's about puck possession, and David Kampf gets face-offs so that you try and win the draw and get hold of the puck. But the fans aren't there to see David Kampf spinning around the ice in overtime.
Has he not sold a jersey yet?
No. So I think all of this comes against the backdrop of the stakes cannot possibly be any lower.
Right.
You're the 32nd place team. you talk about developing the kids, you talk about it being a rebuild, you got to see some of the actions then of a rebuilding team, and that is live with the mistakes. If Jonathan Lekkerimiki's out there in the third period of a 2-all tie and something goes sideways, use it as a teachable moment, but play the kid.
We've uttered the phrase, take away the toys from the coach. And it's starting to need to be, job number one here for this Canuck management group. Take away who he can lean on so that he has to play some of these players. Now, I'm not of the mind, Jeff, that there are more than 2 trades coming. I think it's probably 2 to 3 trades tops. And I don't think that's enough for them to start leaning on Lekkerimaki for defensive prowess in a 2-2 game. But it would probably still help. And you're right. Like, where does he learn defensive responsibility and time and place too? Because I think you teach how a scorer plays in the first period is going to differ very much for even how a scorer plays. Even how a Brock Besser plays late in the third period of a tie game. Like, he's not going to take as many chances, like the veteran guy who's been around the block. But that's how you learn to do that stuff.
Well, and the Canucks were under siege in the third period. Leafs, both teams kind of sleepwalked through the first period.
Yeah.
Canucks were better in the second. They had the lead, go to the third, and then the Leafs cranked it up. I mean, the shots were 18-5. I think that would have been a great pressure cooker, small p pressure again when you're the last place team in the NHL, but it's the Leafs. The building was buzzing. Get Lekkerimaki out there and see if he can hold his own defensively. And again, if it goes sideways, big deal. You lose the hockey game. It's like, this is the learning moment right now. And so to hear Adam Foote defend it after the game, he still sounds like a coach that's coaching to win all these hockey games. And we know that that's not the case. But I'm with you that if management moves off of Evander Kane, if management moves off somebody else, Adam Foote doesn't have those guys as resources at his disposal, and it, in theory, should lead to more opportunities for some of those young guys to get ice time in those situations.
The good news is they can't be as discerning with the defense. They have so many young guys on defense, they have to play them. Like Tom Willander at 16 minutes, I'm okay with that.
Yep.
Like, I'm not begging for more necessarily for Tom Willander.
No, he scored a nice goal the other night. He's holding his own. He's scored in 2 of the last 3 games. Like, his game seems to be coming around nicely.
And the trust is starting to come back for Elias Pettersson.
Absolutely, and so is the ruggedness in his game. We saw him get into it at the end of the second period with Scott Laughton. We talked about going after whoever it was on the Ducks at the Olin Zellweger at the side of the net there. That's what I want to see in his game. Again, though, P.O. Joseph is going to play for a 3rd straight game tonight, and Victor Mancini is going to sit out for a 3rd straight game. And so you do wonder what that is telling you about what this coaching staff thinks about Victor Mancini and sort of his role in all of this. So it's a bit of a mixed bag right now when it comes to the young guys. And, the play the young guys crowd, they're not exactly getting what they're looking for right here, right now.
And we shouldn't look past, again, Liam Öhgren, who gets the assist on the Lekkerimaki goal. And it's been fits and starts for him, but his speed is pretty intoxicating. He's got a decent shot. And, of course, their chemistry goes back some days to World Junior exploits. And
Captain materials.
Yeah, there you go. It does make you think, playing these guys together. Now, I say playing them together. That would probably mean that you get a less veteran line then, and do you not want more veteran guys for Lekkerimaki to find himself? He's further along than Öhgren is here at the NHL level.
Yeah, and Öhgren sets up Lekkerimaki, and it was the perfect example. If you can get Jonathan Lekkerimäki in space with a little time, he's going to score. I mean, that's what he does. And then later in that second period, off the rush, Öhgren tried the spin pass. It didn't quite work. But again, the two of them in tandem, you like to see that kind of stuff. So, I don't know that they have to play together just because they played together in junior. And I see people screaming for the Canucks to go out and get Noah Ostlund out of Buffalo. And 6 years ago, they played junior hockey in a different country. I don't know. I'm not prepared to go that far down that road, but... and so I don't know that I need Lekkerimaki and Öhgren playing together here on the Vancouver Canucks, but I do want to see both of them getting their opportunities, put in positions to succeed, and the other night it looked all right. So I'd say more of it, but we'll have to wait and see how things unfold tonight in Utah.
Top story brought to you by Pacific Blue Cross. Canucks are out on the road, and they'd like you to join them at some point. Win the ultimate Canucks road trip. Get Pacific Blue Cross travel insurance, because why wouldn't you? You can have your chance to see the Canucks on the road. It's complete with flights, hotel, lower bowl tickets, and more. No purchase necessary. Contest ends February the 28th, so you got some time, but get after it. Enter now at pacificbluecross.ca/Canucks. Third period and overtime kind of rescued that game, as we talked about, but it did get fun. And even though they were under siege in the third period because Tolopilo's playing so well, and he's older than the young guys, but he's still a younger guy. That added a little bit of intrigue and pop to a game that started a little bit meager.
Yeah, and I think Adam Foote got it right with the call to go back to Tolopilo after the performance against Anaheim. Want to see more of him? He delivered 39 saves. That's a career high for him. He was really good, and so that's encouraging. And, of course, one of his saves off one of the great goal scorers of this generation, Austin Matthews, on a penalty shot in overtime on a Saturday night in Hockey Night in Canada. I love that, even though, again, stakes aren't tremendously high at this point. Stares down Austin Matthews and makes that stop, and game continues at that point. And overtime, it can be fun. I was reminded that it can be fun. I mean, they have dragged the fun out of it for the most part. But when two teams that are going nowhere in the grand scheme and different conferences, so you don't worry about losing the single point to the other, to your opponent, back and forth they went and traded chances. I mean, the Canucks should have won that thing. There were a bunch of chances. DeBrusk, Garland, Hronek, and EP40 at the side of the net. And then the penalty shot was hilarious because they were all at the end of a long shift. Matthews had nothing left, but he had just enough to distance himself from Garland, who had to hook him. And so referee makes the call, points to center ice. And Matthews got it right in the shootout, but in the penalty shot, Tolopilo came up big.
DeBrusk post to post.
Yeah.
I mean, there was some drama. So they'll try to take something that they've learned from that game into Utah tonight.
I just want one quick thing on the shootout. And when we're talking about play the kids, I don't know how many more shootouts the Canucks will have this year. Maybe a couple. They've got 27 games to go. Again, the bonus point doesn't really matter to them. Jake DeBrusk came close. He hit both posts on his shootout attempt. He's 1 for 5. Elias Pettersson is 0 for 5 in shootouts this year. There are 2 players in the National Hockey League, I looked this up yesterday, 2 players in the NHL that have taken 5 shootout attempts and not scored a goal. Just 2. Jack Eichel in Vegas is one of them, and Elias Pettersson is the other. So, again, with results not really hanging in the balance, but you're going to have to go through the shootout exercise anyhow, is it time to shake up the order? Is it time to look for other shooters with an eye to the future of guys that, when these games and those points do matter, maybe can't? Öhgren's been good. We don't know who the third shooter was going to be because it only went 2 rounds. I'm guessing it would have been Liam Öhgren because he's 2 for 3 as a Canuck, but I don't know that. But, put him higher in the lineup. Get Lekkerimaki an opportunity. Drew O'Connor's having a nice season. See what he can do in a shootout for you.
My guess is Adam Foote has seen, and the production's not really been there for Pettersson of late, but I've heard more than one, and I concur, more than one person say the stick-puck relationship seems to be better for Pettersson these days, and I wonder if Adam Foote was playing a hunch that, with no defender bearing down on him, the handles that we've seen sort of return to Pettersson's game would come in handy in a shootout.
Maybe.
Didn't prove
He scored a nice shootout. Well, they had a shootout at the end of practice on Friday, and I thought, this is going to be perfect. He scored a nice goal. I happened to be rolling video. I posted it.
Yeah.
And then I thought, okay, now let's see if he can do it in a game. He didn't. But 0 for 5 this year. Shootouts aren't for everybody. Marcus Naslund used to hate the shootout. There are other big time guys. Nathan McKinnon, I don't think, is part of the top 3 on Colorado's rotation. Again, maybe it's time to mix it up a little bit and sit PD down for a shootout and give somebody else an opportunity. That's how, if I was advising Adam Foote, next time they go to a shootout, shake it up a little. Try somebody else.
Because after all, Jeff, you don't need to play defense on shootout attempts.
That is true.
So
that is true.
If that's your chief criticism of these young, skilled players, guess what? Not at play in the shootout. Moms might not be. If there's one thing I know moms can't handle, because I've seen it in minor hockey, they don't love nail-biting moments. The moms just get too ramped up about it, so they're probably hoping not to see a shootout. It's the mom's trip, and a nice ovation as they took to the ice.
That was a great moment.
For the game day skate. Thanks to Thomas Drance and The Athletic for tweeting out that biz. But yeah, that's moms in a nutshell. Hockey moms in a nutshell. Now, no one wants to be embarrassed in front of mom. This could be bad for the tank commanders out there, because I would guess they get some enthusiasm from the players here.
Yeah, they flew down yesterday. It's Salt Lake City in the winter, so I don't know that they were running wild on the town.
No, probably
they are
not.
on their way to Vegas next. But yeah, moms, get to bed early.
Yes,
Get a good
that's
sleep. Sure, whatever it takes, to kind of find your motivation here. These 2 games before the Olympic break, where we're looking around the National Hockey League. Vegas has lost 5 in a row, and it kind of feels like maybe some of those guys have already wandered off into Olympic mode.
That's right.
Up until the weekend when Colorado did a number on Detroit. Same thing. Colorado hadn't been playing particularly well, and you start our guys starting to get into Olympic mode rather than or self-preservation and not get hurt, that kind of thing.
Rest mode, vacation mode for those
but
not
now
going.
You got moms there; they're cheering their guys on as they head out onto the ice for the morning skate. They'll, I assume, they'll get them a suite at Delta Center tonight, and they will be there to cheer on the Canucks in this one and in Vegas. Adam Foote did say after telling me on Friday that Brock Besser was going to go on the road trip.
Yeah, I remember that.
He says this morning, no Besser, no Nils Höglander. And the Höglander thing is now very curious. And we've been down this road a bunch of times with a number of guys this year. They're there, they're on the ice, then they disappear. Now he's not on the road trip. Then it's an Olympic break. When are we going to see Nils Höglander again?
How many second, not officially second opinions, but recoils, retractions of players where player A is injured after an absence of indeterminate length, comes back to the ice, and then disappears for a lot longer than the original absence. And it's just weird. I get testing yourself, but you would think you do a testing twirl first. And it seems like they jump to game day skates or practices before they just do the, hey, does this work for me at all? But
well, the Höglander thing one is interesting because, we know that he missed the first half of the season with the ankle injury. And then we were told mid last week that he had to go for evaluation. That was on Wednesday. Didn't practice Wednesday. But then he's there on the ice at the morning skate on Thursday. And it's wow, they finally got a little bit of good news.
Yeah, it wasn't severe.
And that's the last we've seen of him.
Very odd. Kevin Lankinen gets the start, and this will be interesting after all of the work that we've talked about here for Nikita Tolopilo. Does it give Lankinen a second to refocus here? He had his personal issue at the start of the season, which obviously the urgency or severity of that has quelled to the point where he's able to be with the Canucks on a everyday basis. But I don't think that's probably out of his mind entirely, whatever it was. And just getting a second to slow life down a little bit and not be the guy leaned on for 3 straight games. I think this is probably good news for Kevin Lankinen to sort of find his game again. He hasn't been atrocious, but he hasn't been great either. And he hasn't looked as good as Tolopilo did over these last few games.
No, I didn't think he looked very good against the Devils in that 5-4 loss. He gave up 5 on 24 shots. That's not, the numbers don't really add up there. But he was better against Pittsburgh, and then San Jose got to him. And so came the hook. He was spectacular in his 2 minutes and 11 seconds of relief.
That's right.
Nikita Tolopilo on Thursday. But then he watches from the bench, and I know people were saying, it's going to a shootout. Put him in there, because we know his story. In shootouts this year, he should be rested. He should be ready. His mom's on the trip. He's going to the Olympics. I would assume if he plays and gets through this one tonight, then he can watch as the backup, and Tolopilo will play in Vegas on Wednesday. But yeah, if this is it for Kevin Lankinen at the NHL level ahead of the Olympic break, and again, I don't know how much he's going to play for Finland, but he'll want to go in feeling better about his game. And I will say that whether it was the Anaheim game or the Toronto game, now the third period, Leafs kind of took it to the Canucks, but for the most part, we've seen a little more structure of late. That San Jose game was a disaster. They were awful. It kind of feels like they've been snapped back to attention here. don't give up a goal to the Ducks, give up just 2 in the run of play to Toronto the other night. So hopefully Kevin Lankinen's returning to a slightly better defensive environment in front of him.
Nikita Tulipilo had a 3-digit shutout streak.
Yeah.
Like,
110 minutes and something.
Like, I did not think the words shutout and streak would be strung together this season for the Vancouver Canucks, but hey, they did. Darren Dreger coming up later in the show. We'll see what he has to say, but pretty quiet weekend league-wide in terms of rumors. There wasn't a whole lot percolating, and there were some distractions. They had a big Stadium Series game, so there was actual stuff to talk about, but certainly didn't hear much flaming up around the Vancouver Canucks either.
No, and my sense is, and I know you guys have covered this off as well, like, if you're an acquiring team, why would you take on additional salary for 3 weeks here? I think it's going to be, and I stand to be corrected, and I love trades. I mean, I hope there are some, but the idea of bringing in a player that's going to get a game or 2 maybe for an acquiring team, I think basically it's being pushed until after the break, until the freeze comes off, and then there'll be 10 days there, sort of in that run-up. And I look at it like a player like Evander Kane at this stage of his career and the season that he's had, he strikes me as an 11th hour trade deadline kind of acquisition that a team's like, all right, you know, I think they probably want to wait the Canucks out. And the Canucks, after what happened last year at the deadline where they, held on to all their assets, they will get absolutely torched in this market if that happens again. And I think other teams around the league are probably betting on the Canucks being willing to play ball, and maybe the prices come down a little bit at the 11th hour. So we'll see how that goes. But I can't imagine that there's a huge lineup to get your hands on Kane or Camp for.
Well, not at a high price, but Kane in particular. Jeff, I think if his name is Steve Johnson, and we know nothing about his past, or he's just the back of the hockey card of Evander Kane. We don't know of any of the off ice stuff. I think Evander Kane gets traded easily by the trade deadline. I think the only thing getting in the way of an Evander Kane trade is Evander Kane's past. I really do.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a handful of teams that wouldn't be interested at all. Then he's got trade protection, and so that kind of limits again. And we know that the agent's involved there. Hell of a pass, though, to Verlander the other night.
It's a great pass.
So, see, he can do that for a playoff team.
And again, if you're peeling, I know the Canucks fans want a third. They want at least a fourth. Folks, if the top price offered is a 5th-round pick, you take it.
Yeah.
I mean, you just take it. So I think all things being equal, he probably does get traded, but it's not necessarily a slam dunk. Media starting to meander over to Italy ahead of the players. Like, did you say you saw Ryan Rishaug and Masters are already there?
Yeah.
Like, we're week and a half away from the first hockey game.
We are. I mean, Olympic events start on Wednesday.
Yes.
The opening ceremony on Friday, but we see that all the time, that there are a few, I think, curling and some other things.
But men's hockey's a week and a half away.
Yeah.
Turns into a long trip for those guys. The various video and pictures, though, are coming out from the arena. And credit to the Italian workers. They got on their horse and got a lot done. They got a new scoreboard hoisted up into the rafters there, and there's been various video tours posted online. And, I mean, it looks like a finished arena. I'm sure they can find some exposed drywall somewhere. That will make us say officially it's not done. But I think the story might be done here, Jeff. I think it's going to be good enough.
I hope so. I mean, I don't want that to be the talk coming out of the Olympics, that there were issues with the ice, or that, the trailer park that is the dressing rooms out back, that, that's obviously not up to NHL standards, but this is what it is. I think they know that going in. I just hope that the building holds its own, and that the hockey lets, the games themselves and the quality of the play does the speaking there.
More hockey in a second again with Dregs, but we do have to get to another huge story from the weekend. And we have to be careful not to be panic-inducing here, but we also walk that line of being real. And the Whitecaps are in trouble. After a real talk kind of visit from the MLS commissioner in the fall was supposed to spur on a solution with BC Place for the next few years, it doesn't appear to be happening, prompting the Caps to deliver a statement to ticket holders in the weekend and to meet the media as well. The league released their own statement. The Vancouver Whitecaps continue to face unresolved business and stadium challenges, that it read, that are limiting the club's long-term future in the city. Operational constraints around scheduling and venue access have intensified in 2026. creating untenable conditions for a major league club with no clear path forward to resolving these challenges in future years. This is not fair to the club or its fans. MLS continues to actively support the club and work alongside ownership to pursue a solution in Vancouver. However, meaningful progress is urgently required to establish a sustainable path forward. Axel went on to say, Axel Suster, the 2026 will be a lower revenue year as projected right now than 2025 was because of games that will have to come out of BC Place into smaller venues, or worse yet, in the case of a Leagues Cup scenario, it looks like MLS will have to just move and put the games in other MLS venues south of the border. Like the Whitecaps will just play all of their Leagues Cup matches away from the market. So they're going to lose home games that they've qualified for, and they'll have to play those on the road. If they escape the group play in Leagues Cup, there's another chance for them to hold another. Like, they don't make much money on home games as it is, but you start taking the home games away, it's even less so. So that's why he says it's going to be a worse season here. It's concerning. I mean, the Grizzlies' shadow lurks very large here.
No, I mean, no clear path forward. That's like from the league in that statement. That's it's frightening. And you think like all the goodwill that has built up here from the Thomas Muller edition to the MLS Cup final, and this city was buzzing in early December. They're thinking that the Caps were going to bring that trophy back to town, and here we are. I mean, it's the first days of February, and now this ominous warning. And I know it's not this simple, but I mean, the great irony to me is this building that has been deemed fit to host the greatest soccer spectacle of all isn't, the right fit for the local soccer team. And obviously, I mean, we know the issues around BC Place, but the other part here is, like, even through the MOU with the city and this idea of the PNE parcel of land, like, these things don't pop up overnight. Like, we're talking years still. So, like, that's my concern. It's like, could they squeeze out one more year at BC Place? Yeah, but I mean, just listening to the league here, and we know, when I saw the story about, what was it, 100 people that had expressed interest, 40 parties had, like, wanted to
sign the NDA,
look into the books, and nobody came away liking what they saw here. Like, that's frightening. It is shocking.
Yeah, and to be clear, like, people are still, I think, under the mistaken belief here that they're trying to organize a deal with BC Place to keep them into Vancouver into perpetuity. That's not the case. All of this is for an interim length of time. There is no blue sky, and this was covered off with the commissioner in the fall. There is no blue sky deal, however cheap it would be at BC Place, that alone would keep the Whitecaps in Vancouver. What they're trying to do is create a healthy enough landscape that revenues can flow a little bit to the Whitecaps over the interim, as you say. What's it going to take to plan that stadium, build that stadium? I mean, we're talking 5 years probably, something like that at best. They're looking for a good deal through 5 years. But at that point, they need their own stadium, controlling dates, controlling revenue, and also having everything else that goes around it, whether that's a casino out there at the PNE, fairgrounds of some sort, maybe condos, certainly businesses and restaurants. Like, that's how you make money. And that's what other teams around Major League Soccer have, is they've got a complex that gives them money even in addition. We saw, remember the state of the San Jose field after a Coldplay concert when the Caps had to go down and play San Jose. A stadium they can rent out, and then they're the evil landlords, gouging people for money. That's what they want for themselves.
And you think of what the Whitecaps have done here in the last couple of years, obviously, this build-up to getting to MLS Cup. Like, Thomas Muller joined the team in August, I think.
Yeah.
Like, let's fast forward that 6 months. What if he hadn't, but he was considering coming to Vancouver with this kind of uncertainty? Like, if you're Axel Schuster, how do you go about attracting quality talent and free agents when this whole thing of, are they going to be here for a year? Are they going to be here next year? Who knows? Like, it makes the So that's a huge challenge in and of itself. But then I think it makes the operating side of things from a management perspective that much more challenging as well. There's just uncertainty and instability, and
they did sign a few players, but it's been projects rather than brand names. Now BC Place has been getting a bad rap here. The Caps were playing nice here this weekend, though, saying they do believe that the best foot was put forward by BC Place. There just might not be a solution given the cost that Pavco needs to incur to operate the facility. Maybe there is some grace that could be shown by the provincial government, but I don't know that to be true necessarily. And to be clear on what goes forward in terms of the games, Champ games will have to be played somewhere smallish in the May window. I mean, I don't know where that would be, if it's Swangard or Starlight Stadium in Victoria. If they advance to CONCACAF semis or finals, remember how much fun we had at BC Place with the CONCACAF semifinals, 50,000 versus Messi again and all that.
Yeah, there's got to be some standards, right?
That's the problem. There has to be standards for a competition of that high level. You're looking at the Whitecaps likely in Edmonton. That's the closest FIFA-approved stadium that meets all of the requirements. They have played CONCACAF champions at Starlight, but for a semifinal game, not going to cut it. Again, whether the province can pull a rabbit out of a hat or something can be done to find an interim solution, we'll see. But if anybody has a spare stadium lying around or really rich friends, sports fans would love to see this. Indy, PGA, Grizzlies. It's too bad. I mean, this is, and especially with it's a World Cup city.
Yeah.
Is Major League Soccer going to be forced to pull out of a World Cup city maybe as soon as the year after the World Cup was staged in that city? Like, that sentence.
Yeah, it's hard to wrap your head around it.
It really does. It's too bad. Now, time is of the essence. There's no doubt about it. But, I mean, the clock has not struck 12 yet. Let's hope there's something in the offing that can be done here. But more Whitecaps news coming on the pitch a little bit later in the program. It's time for the menu for today's show. Greta, great spot to watch the game. If you're going to the big game, Greta's walk-in distance to the arena or stadium. Stop by before or after, but it's a great spot for an upcoming party or event. We have ours there all the time. So if you need a venue for team building or social events, check out Greta, gretabar.com. The great street food, of course, the arcade, so much fun. 50 West Cordova, gretabar.com. Let the games begin. Darren Dreger from TSN joins us momentarily. The latest from around the league in terms of trade rumors. We'll look at names like DeBrusk and Garland and others as well. Plus, Barry Trotz is done in Nashville. That was a bit of a shocker. We'll see what Darren has to say about that. TSN's Farhan Lalji joins us as well. CFL free agency was this past weekend. The Lions were fairly quiet. They brought a lot of people. Remember, they were good last year. So it was more about just making sure you don't get worse and don't lose players. So they did well in retaining most of their players, save for one, who ended up being the belle of the ball of CFL free agents in Jarrell Broxton. We'll also get his take. BC Lions played BC Place. And, Jeff, I should clarify there, too. But I got a lot of inquiries about that. Blake, well, what's the difference? Why don't the Lions complain? The Lions payroll is 40% of the Whitecaps payroll. A lot more bills to be paid for the Whitecaps than there is for the BC Lions. Also, you're talking about 9-10 dates for the Lions. You're talking about 22 to 25 dates for the Whitecaps. So how often you pay rent,
for sure,
weighs on the Whitecaps a lot more than the BC Lions. We'll see if Farhan echoes those sorts of sentiments. And he is there. He's getting ready for the Super Bowl.
Yeah, it's on. It's Super Bowl week. So
we'll get his early prognostications and feelings on what's going to happen here. The more you stew on a topic, you can drum up all sorts of bad case scenarios for the Seahawks. But
no.
I like their chances. Bet365. Our picks of the day brought to you by Bet365. Have you had a chance to look ahead yet?
I have, and just on the Barry Trotz news of the day down in Nashville, I do wonder how that will trickle down to the locker room. I mean, the guy's just been Mr. Nashville Predator essentially from day one. I know he left, but comes back as management. I think it may have a detrimental effect. It may sort of bring the mood down in Music City. They're at home to the St. Louis Blues.
Although his last couple of signings now have been a little bit redeemed in the last couple of months because Stamkos
Stamkos got off such a terrible start, and has been red hot since December. No, they've shown some signs of life, but I still think I'm going to take. There's value on St. Louis as the underdog on the road here. I'm going to take the Blues at plus 120 on the money line.
All right, the Canucks into Utah to take on the Mammoth. Not even the Mammoth minus 1.5 goals gets me into plus territory. So that's a tough pill to swallow. So let's look instead at some goal scorers for the Vancouver Canucks. And you know who is due? Linus Karlsson's been such a good story. Mm-hmm. But I'd like to see we're pumping up the kids, and a lot of them have contributed here of late. I want Linus Karlsson, and he's, again, an elder kid. He's the firstborn.
That's true. 26 now.
Plus 155 on an anytime goal. That's on a point from Linus Karlsson. Linus Karlsson, a point of any kind, plus 155.
The Canucks will be facing Karl Vejmelka tonight in goal. You know that Karl Vejmelka is tied with Andrei Vasilevsky for the most wins in the National Hockey League this season.
There's a bunch of weird stories. Brandon Bussey as well. Goaltending is witchcraft. It is.
He's played more minutes than anybody. I mean, so that's part of it. They lean on him a ton. But when I just saw that Vasilevsky getting the win in the fight and on the ice last night, got his total up to 25, and Vejmelka sitting at 25 as well. So.
Yeah, is there? I'll see if there's a prop for tomorrow from Bet365 for goalie fights from here to the end of the season.
Now.
It is. This segment, again, a presentation of Bet365. Whatever your bet, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Download the app, get in on the game, use the code NATION. Must be 19 years of age or older. Please play responsibly. More walk around the NHL with TSN's Darren Dreger next. Sakaris and Price from the Wall Center in this segment, a presentation of your Pacific Toyota dealers and the Toyota Prius plug-in hybrid. And, of course, if you're sick and tired of the gas prices, living day-to-day with the fear, what are they at today? Fear no longer. Get the plug-in hybrid. You may never reach the pumps again. It's got 72 kilometers of electric range, so depending on what you need this vehicle for, you can do most of your day-to-day stuff fully electric. If you do need that road trip, though, come summertime, spring break, what have you, it's there for you as well. The gas tank will take you wherever you need to go. All the space in the back for the gear as well. Ample back seats. We put Matt in the back seat, which is
place for him.
Where most people like him. And no problem. All 6'4" of them. So go check it out. Take one for a test drive. It's a lot of fun to drive as well. Right now you can lease the 109 or the 2026 Prius plug-in hybrid SE from 109 weekly at 3.99% APR for 64 months. That's with $3,300 down. Visit shoptoyota.ca or your local Pacific Toyota dealer today. Back to tell us about all the action. It is sizzling hot on the trade market, right? Darren Dreger from TSN joining us once again. It seems all quiet. Before we got going here, Jeff was just whispering to me, I don't think this roster freeze thing's doing anything to push the files. Is that true?
Yeah,
it's not doing anything?
No, it's not entirely true. I mean, it's certainly spiced up the conversations, right? But does conversation and trade negotiation actually equate to a meaningful deal? And that's what we don't know. I do think that we are going to see some activity here in the next couple of days. Does it start with the big fish that is Artemi Panarin, the New York Rangers? That's just an odd scenario all the way around. There's no doubt that there are teams that are in the market and trying to get stuff done, but then you have to look at it from a selling perspective. And Vancouver fits into that conversation. If there was a partner or a deal that made sense, you would make that deal. You're not waiting or thinking that, okay, well, February 4th, somebody's going to come in under the wire before the Olympic freeze and meet our premium return. No, probably not, unless you've got an injury, right? Unless there's something that you've had on the back burner that you feel like if you don't jump now, you're really going to get sucked into that vacuum post-Olympics leading up to March 6th. So I do think that we are going to see some things in the next day or two, but unless something dramatic changes here, it doesn't seem like there's a lot of big pieces in play beyond the obvious in Panarin.
The Canucks perspective, they've got a pretty warming forward here in Jake DeBrusk, if he's still being dangled at all, and an ice-cold Connor Garland who maintains he's doing the little things but not getting the results. Do you think either of those two guys is still a possibility here for the Vancouver Canucks? Maybe not before the roster freeze, but before the deadline.
Yeah, possibility, I think, is fair. I think that's an accurate way to describe it. I don't think that Patrick Galvin is closing off conversations on any player, to be fair. How can you? How creative is Vancouver willing to get? Again, those are conversations that probably elevate closer to March 6th. Connor Garland is interesting for me. He is, because, he's gone through a dry spell here of late. But I think there are a number of teams that look at him as an intriguing possibility and a piece that could help them, right? But again, we're in that place, and it's relatively new for most general managers. They knew that the February 4th trade deadline or roster freeze, was coming in advance of the trade deadline. But is it really a high pressure point? And that's kind of what we just talked about. And I also think that, if I'm a buying team, I know what Vancouver has had in play for weeks, literally for weeks. I'm more interested in waiting around to see if there's another piece that pops that maybe I haven't talked about or, I didn't think was going to be available. Now, all of a sudden, that player is available. But DeBrusk, I haven't heard his name out there, a lot of late. But Connor Garland's name definitely is a name that other clubs have mentioned.
I think it's important, too, and I think a lot of people kind of understand it, but, we look at Connor Garland, and he's playing with Elias Pettersson the other night on the top line of the Vancouver Canucks. Acquiring teams aren't looking at Connor Garland much as they weren't looking at Kiefer Sherwood, who was the Canucks' leading goal scorer. They're not expecting those guys to come in and be top-end guys. No. They want to be pieces that can help a good team already and slot a guy like Garland probably where he should be on a third line where he can, help drive play.
Yeah, I think that's bang on. But again, when you're going through your pro scouting meetings, and most clubs are through that process now, they literally sit in boardrooms in hotels, and sometimes it's in their home city, and they've got whiteboards all over the place. All right, here are the players that we know are in play. Here are the players that we hope are going to be in play. And here's a list of pie-in-the-sky stuff. And then you've got another series of whiteboards that illustrates what you're willing to throw into an equation conversation or into a trade transaction, right? And I've always given Jim Rutherford credit because he gets a lot of his heavy lifting work done early. Billy Guerin learned from him in Pittsburgh. He does the same thing with the Minnesota Wild. And more often than not, we see teams do it every single year around the trade deadline. You overpay, right? You get into a situation where the deadline is looming. You're getting pressure from above because the owner thinks that you're farther ahead than maybe you are in reality. And so you go, okay, well, that defenseman isn't exactly what we want. He's a left shot. He's not a right shot, but that's the best of what's available. So let's overpay and acquire that player. I just, in having the conversation, J-Pat, you're right. I mean, Connor Garland makes a lot of teams better, right? He does, based on the way he plays and when he's, he's producing, he's contributing. He's an all-around good piece. But are you comparing him to who, right? And that's what the clubs who are buyers right now are still waiting for.
Hey, Dregs, the Canucks are in Utah tonight. I want to ask you about the Mammoth because we know that, I mean, they made the splash last year in Salt Lake City. I thought they might be aggressive and try and bring playoff hockey to Salt Lake in their first year. It didn't happen. They have fallen just below the playoff bar in the West. Now, they're not going to catch any of those three teams above them in the Central, so they really are looking at a wild card spot. An owner that's got oodles of cash, team that is playing reasonably well, and the Canucks will, again, they'll see them tonight, but you hearing anything out of Utah and what they might do to try to solidify a playoff spot?
Yeah, I mean, there's an appetite there by Billy Armstrong to bolster what they have up front, right? Add some scoring punch if they can bring that in. I mean, everything you said is bang on here. You've got an owner that, isn't necessarily heavily involved in the hockey operations sense of things, but of course he can envision what a playoff atmosphere would look like in Utah, and he would want that as much as anybody. So when we think of the teams that are at the forefront of trade activity, Utah and Seattle don't necessarily come to mind as big buyers, but that's not to say that they're not active and heavily involved. And I think both are. There's been some, just to shift over to Seattle for a moment here, because of the name dropping that has been reported on. I mean, there's been a buzz around Shane Wright. Well, we look at Seattle. There's a team that actually has some pieces up the middle of the ice. They've got some center, Shane Wright, that they're willing to talk to clubs on, but they need a top six winger coming back. Well, that's not an easy trade to make between now and the Olympic roster freeze, even, to March 6th. Who are we talking about here? And I'm not going to speculate on the connections that they made with Winnipeg and some of the younger players that are being tossed around out there, because truthfully, most of the stuff that's being speculated isn't real. But I would look at Utah as a team that most definitely is open to the idea of not making a splash, definitely adding something to build on what they've had, and to push them into that conversation and higher into the possibility of locking down a playoff spot.
Utah is part of a group of a class of newcomers to the buying circle.
I know.
There's a bunch of somebody's going to pull off something silly, aren't they? Because they haven't been here in a while, like San Jose, Utah, Anaheim, Seattle. Yeah. Heck, even Buffalo and Columbus in the East. If Lawrence Gilman and company believe that after 5 straight wins they can make the leap up 6 points to the group, but there's a lot of new guys on the block here that haven't bought in a long time. Somebody's going to do something stupid, aren't they?
Probably, yes.
One guy.
Which is what we hope for.
Only takes one.
Yeah, we need one guy. But is it going to be the buyer that does something stupid, or is it going to be the seller, right? Mm-hmm. Because, as you're framing the question, Blake, I'm thinking of Buffalo for some reason. And mostly because of the general manager, the Jarmo Kekalainen, was with the Columbus Blue Jackets. There was a guy who wasn't afraid to make big, brash decisions. Now, they didn't work out well for him in Columbus, right? But he did it with the intent to almost take that all-in sort of approach. And it didn't pan out for him during his days in Columbus. But, what do you do in Buffalo? That team is humming right now. That's a good team. Right. So you've got Alex Tuck, and it doesn't sound like there's a whole lot of negotiating and extension activity around him. Now that can change with a phone call. And I do believe that we're going to see more of that too, between the freeze being lifted and then March 6th. Right. It's not always just about trades. I mean, Buffalo's got to either lock down Alex Tuck or just use him as an own rental, because doesn't seem like there's any way that they're going to trade that piece. If they trade that piece, then that fits into the category of doing something borderline dumb. And I don't think Buffalo and Jarmo are going to do that. But there's an appetite for some teams out there to get fairly dramatic. So let's see if it plays out that way.
On the weekend, we wondered if the Canucks, with a win, could put the nail in the coffin for the Toronto Maple Leafs. In the end, the Leafs get 2 points out of the Canucks here in Vancouver. And it certainly feels, and I was chatting with some people on Twitter about it, and they're like, oh, no, they're done. They know they're done.
Yeah.
And they should know in their heart of hearts that they're probably done because of all the teams that are around them.
Yeah.
But, I mean, they are 2 points back of the Columbus Blue Jackets and the Washington Capitals, who probably don't think they're done. So,
Right.
Does Brad Treliving think that he's done? Do you think they know that they're out?
He probably thinks that. He's not going to say it publicly.
Yeah.
And I don't think that his actions are going to support that either. Not yet. I think that they feel like they just need to get to the Olympic break. They do. And that includes games in Calgary and Edmonton, neither of which are going to be easy. I mean, the one thing that, look, we can all read the standings day by day. How much change has there been in the standings? Really not a lot. From the beginning of the year to where we're at now.
Buffalo, and that's about it. Yeah.
That's about it. So, when you look at the collection of teams that the Maple Leafs are going to have to climb over and then bump out, who is dropping out of that? Is it Boston? Probably not. Like, and I guess if I were management or in management of the Toronto Maple Leafs, I'd be looking at my reality, and that is the cupboard is bare. It's bare. They've got 2 young prospects coming. Easton Cowan's playing in the NHL. Ben Danford is a defenseman playing in the Ontario Hockey League. Now, the upside on Ben Danford, I'm told, is he could be a top 4 NHL defenseman with potentially limited offensive side. So, you've got Bobby McMahon, unrestricted free agent, who's closing in on another 20-year campaign, 20-goal campaign. He's a $5 million player, $4.5 to $5 million. So can they commit to doing that? They don't have a first round, and depending on what happens, imagine if that pick protection comes into play with the Boston Bruins. Right. And then that pick slides. So then Toronto doesn't have a pick in first round pick in 27 or 28. If you can get a first round pick for Bobby McMahon and maybe something else, I'd be looking at that. For sure I would. Scott Laughton, Scott Laughton's a good player. He's a heck of a penalty killer. He's an unbelievable face-off guy. If he's in your bottom 6 and you're a Stanley Cup contender, I think you're in pretty good shape up the middle of the ice. So they have assets that they're probably going to sell. They just don't want to tell us yet that that's what they're doing. But Treliving's having those conversations.
I'm curious if Bill Zito has a rabbit that he can pull out of the hat. It's getting a little murky down in Florida now. Yeah. And obviously back-to-back Stanley Cup wins, 3 straight trips to the final. Yeah. I mean, they've been one of the best teams of the post-pandemic era. We know all of that. But they're running out of runway just to make the playoffs. Maybe this comes full circle back to Artemi Panarin. Who knows? But do you think Florida is going to be heard from before all is said and done here?
I do, because that's just the gunslinger that Billy Zito is. We've seen this from him. We've seen it from others. Julien Brisebois in Tampa Bay, Billy Guerin we talked about earlier, Jim Nill, the Dallas Stars. Like, those are the teams that do something of substance to better their chances. And man, they've got winning in their veins, the Florida Panthers as an organization. So in some way, shape, or form, the general manager is going to step in and he's going to bring in some help. I was told by a source there that I trust that Artemi Panarin is not a fit. They either can't make it work cap-wise, or can't make it work moving forward cap-wise, or just don't necessarily feel like, he's the piece that they need. But I would never, until that bell rings 3:00 Eastern on March 6th, we will be circling around Bill Zito and the Florida Panthers, or they just flat out drop out of it. And I don't think that any of us expect that. I mean, they've had just a crazy amount of injuries to top guys all season long, and it continues now with some bigger players. But I still think, unless mathematically they just recognize it's not worth it, Billy Zito for me will be a buyer.
A credit to the Nashville Predators for being 2 games above 500, because 10, 15 games into the season, I thought they might be at the bottom of the league. So 56 points in 54 games, not too shabby, but that doesn't play into it for Barry Trotz. Give us the lowdown on what you know about Trotz's decision to step down.
Yeah, it's been a tough go for Barry, to be fair, and I don't know how much he'll get into this, so I do want to respect the man's privacy. I believe it's health related and family related. His own health, and probably wants to look after whatever the issues are that he's dealing with, and then on top of that, spend more time around his family. I mean, we'll all get to that place. And I always wondered. I kind of chuckle to myself when I wonder this. I mean, for all the management types, the coaches who just stay in it, into their 60s and some into their 70s, I'm like, I don't get it. I don't, the money
Enjoy
isn't
life.
a factor anymore.
Yeah.
Just get out there and play golf and hang out with your grandkids, for heaven's sake. What are you stressing and losing years of your life worrying about this stuff for? So that's my sense as to where Barry is. The timing is curious. And we had heard some rumblings around this in the offseason, to be honest. And then it didn't happen in Nashville. So Barry felt comfortable at that point, continuing to push. But it does sound like he's going to continue to run things until a replacement is brought in, whenever, they go through that process. But, my understanding is that this is a full-scale search, because if you're hiring today, who are you hiring? Rob Blake is really the only guy who's available right now. Otherwise, if you're trying to get to management types who are employed, that gets a little spicy because they know so much about the team that they're working with right now. Right. And most of the owners involved in that process don't necessarily want their guys to leave in season or before the trade deadline. But it does sound like Nashville is going to go down that road and do a proper search.
One last Canuck question here.
Yeah.
Fans and media have had some Adam Foote issues. Deployment, is he the guy to shepherd this? Now, the fans that want the top draft pick, they're saying leave him in, let him cook, let him get to 32nd with a bullet. Yeah. What do you think Canucks management thinks about how Adam Foote is guiding the ship right now?
Well, they're very supportive right now, and as you would expect, Foote is in constant conversation with both Patrick Allvin and Jimmy Rutherford, day by day for sure, and probably a number of times over the course of the day. So any concerns a management would have with, his handling of one player versus another, that would be dealt with and talked about internally, right? I can tell you that as far as management standpoint is right now, there's no interest in removing Adam Foote as head coach. There isn't. I mean, that's media fodder for conversation. I think everybody can understand it, just given where Vancouver is, and the fact that they've got good young players in the lineup, and you want to make sure that the development style of these players is respected and embraced. So as I will go this far with Foote and his future in Vancouver, no different than anyone else inside hockey operations. Undoubtedly, there will be a review at the end of the year, but they would do that as normal practice, as part of the exit process of a disappointing year in the direction that they're going. But I was flat out told there's no contemplating on getting rid of Adam Foote at this point.
The next time you're covering a Board of Governors meeting in South Florida, what are the chances you will be in a John Cooper-like outfit for your Sports Center hit? Is there any chance
it happen,
you got to
Dregs.
button down a few buttons?
Nobody would. Yeah, nobody wants to see that. So I would say less than zero. We go as far as the golf shirt or a dress shirt under the jacket, right? And occasionally we'll slip on sunglasses, just depending on the time of day shooting. Yeah, it doesn't happen very often. I mean, I didn't think that I would ever see John Cooper's bare, hairy chest.
No.
But now that I have, I don't ever need to see it again. But I will say this. I do, I'm not an outdoor game guy anymore. Honestly, it's lost its luster for me. It's just, there's too much. But it's not about me. It's about the spectacle of the event. The community embraces it. The fans have fun with it. The players obviously like it. So I get it. I understand it. But I will give credit to Coop, his coaching staff, the Lightning, the Bruins for playing a part in what was a party. And the game didn't disappoint. It was just wacko.
No.
That game was bonkers. Like, I can tell, there will be meetings happening with Stephen Walkham, the head of NHL officiating, and probably hockey ops going, okay, what exactly was going on with the officiating last night, in our spectacle game here? What was that all about? So anyway,
we were saying it's less a national spectacle now, right? Like these and even though, which is too bad, because, and I think the odd Winter Classic could capture national attention again, but you're right. Yeah. It is serving the purpose locally at the very least, that people are showing up.
Yeah. I mean, it's incredible that the technicians that put that venue together do it as masterfully as they do.
Yeah.
I mean, now granted, there's a cold snap going through Florida, which has helped immensely, right? I mean, have you guys watched some of the videos? I watched a video today. This guy's collecting iguanas that can't handle the cold, so they're not dying, but they go into a coma state. So he's picking them off the ground. That's how
they
cold
fall
it
out.
is in Florida. So, anyway, so I marvel at that. But, I mean, it looks like just another game, the officiating included. And aside from John Cooper's hairy chest that we all saw.
Imagine if there,
and the fact they got 2 points and a goalie fight, by the the way. So I guess
imagine if there was iguanas in Saskatchewan. The ground would be littered in iguanas.
And be popsicles. That's what they would be.
Yeah. Dregs, thanks for this. Appreciate it. Might check in one last time here during the Olympics and see what's cooking, but appreciate it and enjoy the week.
Thanks, Dregs.
All right, guys. You too. Thank you.
Sekeres Price featuring Jeff Paterson, of course, from the Wall Center, and a segment of presentation of Pizza, who they have access to a calendar, Jeff.
They know what's coming.
They know what's coming, and they are preparing for that. They're preparing for you, really. For a limited time only, this weekend only. Might there be something coming up this weekend? February 5th to 8th, Pizza's bringing back 20 wings for $20. You can do the math. I can do the math, Jeff. That's $1 a wing. That's a good deal. $1 loony per wing. Choose from dips and sauces. Get your big game spread ready for kickoff. I would suggest you order these ahead of time, like well ahead of time. You could probably reheat them in your own oven if you need be. $1 a wing at Pizza, February 5th to 8th only. Get on it. Can't wait. We'll talk a little bit about said big game with our next guest, who is down there ready to cover media night at the Super Bowl. It's TSN's Farhan Lalji back with us once again. Farhan, how are you?
I'm good, gents. Always prefer J-Pat and Price to Sekeres and Price.
Well, it's a different flavor. It's for a limited time only, much like $1 a wing.
You're paying J-Pat a lot more than $1, I can assure you.
He would beg to differ, perhaps. Well, we're going to talk about why you're down there and all the festivities this week in just a second. But, of course, CFL free agency opening up on the weekend as well. I saw lots of logos and news attached to all those logos. I did not see the BC Lions logo much here, Farhan.
Yeah, it wasn't attached to anybody yesterday, but in fairness to the Lions, they did get out in front of it by adding a very good linebacker in Darnell Sankey, and then they also added Casey Sales, defensive lineman that was previously with Hamilton, to upgrade in those areas. So I think they're happy with those moves. But look, the club still has some needs. And when you come out of free agency and you lose Gerald Broxton and you're not able to address that, and he was the number one tackle on the market, might have been the number one player available at any position come February 1st, commanded a big dollar and got it. And, those guys are tough to replace, whether you're Canadian, American, getting it out of free agency or other ways, it's just hard to replace. So, that's one thing they've got to get figured out. And they do have some needs in the back end on their defense, which I think I would imagine at some point today, they'll probably get, a day 2 level signing back there, because they've got a lot of questions and a lot of potential youth, which you don't want to have in that position group.
There was some talk of Trey Ford as a backup quarterback. But if I'm straightforward, I don't want to come to BC really either, not because it's not a great organization and all that, but I don't think I'm going to play football much if I'm coming to BC.
Yeah, totally true. He's never going to be more than a backup here behind Nathan Rourke, and there's some upside. Like if you look at, for example, Sam Darnold, right? I mean, he was in San Francisco as a backup, then was able to get a job in Minnesota. Mac Jones, for example, this year was a backup in San Francisco. Probably is going to get a job somewhere else next year, right? Because he did some good things in a limited sample size, but he's not going to vault Brock Purdy in that organization. So you can still do that, but obviously there's a clearer line to a starting job in a place like Hamilton. So you get to work with a really good quarterback developer in Scott Milanovic, but then Bo Levi Mitchell's not getting any younger. So, he does his 2 years potentially. And then if things go well for Trey Ford, he may have an opportunity at that point to have a second life. Whereas if you're in BC, you're going to have to move eventually anyway.
What about the Lions' backup quarterback? Jeremiah Masoli was here, but I don't know that he's coming back. Do they have a second guy on the depth chart behind Nathan Rourke?
Yeah, I think there's some concern there, right? They've got Chase Bryce available to them potentially, right? I'm not sure how much ground was gained last year or development was created last year. And ultimately, with a lot of these guys, we just don't know until they get that opportunity. But if I'm the Lions, I'm probably trying to upgrade there, right? Because if you're Chase Bryce isn't necessarily a guy that moves exceptionally well, and if I'm looking for my next guy in this league, you better be incredibly precise if you're not going to be a mover, right, in this league. So, if I was them, I'd keep looking, but you also want to have some level of experience behind you. So there's not much left. I know they were talking to both Trey Ford and Dustin Crum, and Crum went to Montreal. So I think for them, do you go and get a McLeod Bethel Thompson? Probably not, right? Because of how much you're investing in the starting quarterback. There's not a lot of money left there. But so we'll see. Caleb Evans, one of these guys, is there somebody else they go through, or do they just run it back with Bryson Masoli? Because it did ultimately get him through last year. We'll find out. But the Lions do need to kind of get back into the business of development at the position, because I understand Nathan Rourke is young, but you're only one hit away, right?
Was there anything in Nathan Rourke's extension that surprised you in any way?
Not really. Like a lot of times with these situations, you'll get teams renegotiate the final year of the contract and bring the salary number down, and that is reflected in the rest of the contract. And that didn't happen here. But keep in mind, Nathan's Canadian, not American. Usually when they do that with a player, like Nathan, for example, is getting $685 next year, which is a $60,000 increase from last year. You would lower that, and then you'd give him a bigger signing bonus. But that's because those are taxed at different amounts in the United States. Being a Canadian, you can't really take advantage of that. So they didn't touch the final year of the existing deal. They just added 2 years to it, and the increase was quite minimal, right? So I think that's Nathan wanting to leave some money on the table to help build a team. It would be easy to look at him and say he's the only guy in the league making $700,000 in 27 and 28, but he could have justified more given his status in the league. So not a ton surprised me, but they've got to surround him with an upgraded team in some areas.
Nobody would have been like, they were Grey Cup worthy last year. They obviously didn't get there,
sure.
But they were a very good team. Nobody would have been surprised if they were hoisting the chalice. So with that in mind, you pretty covered. I mean, there's areas of concern. You've touched on it, back up and along the offensive line as well. But is there any place you're really concerned right now? And again, it'll be specific.
Yeah,
I know they don't have a litany.
I'm really concerned about the secondary, because you've got Gary Peters, who I know was dealing with some injuries last year. His play dropped a little bit. I think he can get that back, but he's still, 34, right? So you've got to get younger there. And then on the other side, you had Robert Carter, who was such a promising guy, but he's now in Indianapolis. Now, ultimately, they may get him back. They may not. But if they do, okay, so that's great. But then when you look in the secondary, they were kind of a guy short, which is why they had to go get TJ Lee, but they got Ronald Kent Jr. on the other side, who, for my money's an area I think they should upgrade. They're really good at safety, but you could make the argument that they need 3 new guys in the back end, and you cannot, like whether it's offensive line or secondary, you can't have multiple rookies in those groups. You're going to put one in like they did with Robert Carter Jr., but, you could make the case that even last year they were at least 1 short for the majority of the season. So I think they're 2, potentially 3 short. So I have have huge concerns there. I think their front seven is fine, or front six, I should say. Yeah, front seven if you include Deontay Williams at the nickel spot. But so I think they're fine there. But they better get something figured out in the back end, or teams are going to pick them apart.
Any other player personnel questions you want to get to? No, we'll move on to the other issue at play, and that is that there is no issue. It doesn't sound like, as we look at the Whitecaps BC Place arrangement here.
Yeah,
Farhan, one thing that is conspicuously absent, and I fielded a lot of questions on this myself and took a run at that earlier as well, but I want to hear from you. Why don't we hear complaints from the BC Lions about the situation at BC Place?
I think there's a lot of conversation behind the scenes, but it's just not the way Mark Doman does business. And believe me, I am not passing any level of judgment on the ownership group of the Whitecaps, because I think they do a fabulous job. But I think that their conversations are a little more front and center because there may be some alternatives for the franchise, right? And Don Garber and MLS have gotten really noisy as well. So I don't think a ton of the noise you get is initiated by Axel Schuster. I think it's MLS at head office, and then Schuster then gets asked about those comments and is kind of compelled to respond and say, yeah, we do have a bit of an issue. And they do, but their lines aren't going anywhere, right? I mean, that's just not the way the CFL works, because there just aren't enough markets for a team to just pick up and leave to. Which is probably the single biggest thing that determines franchise valuation in MLS. So, so it's a little more prevalent because there's other people knocking on the door to potentially want to move this team. And that's why the Lions just kind of take a different approach. They need to find a way to work it out. And honestly, they could ultimately benefit by what's happening with the Whitecaps, because any deal that they wind up getting, or any concessions they wind up getting, is ultimately going to make its way down, Highway 1 to the Lions offices in Surrey, and they're going to get the same benefit. So, but look, it would be great if there was a better setup for both of these teams, right? And I know that there's a bit of a disconnect between the teams in terms of what they would want a replacement facility to look like in terms of size, but BC Place itself is also on the table, and that's where they share the concerns collectively, right? So I hope, we look, bottom line is, we don't want the Whitecaps going anywhere. Whether or not the Lions benefit by that or not, whether or not it means another facility for both teams to go into, or a better scenario at BC Place. I don't hate BC Place as much as maybe a lot of soccer people do. I think it's a facility that stood the test of time in terms of its amenities and appearance. But at the end of the day, the financial model simply isn't working.
I mean, this year notwithstanding, because the Lions get bumped because of the World Cup, but just in general, do you think the Lions like BC Place as a home base?
Yeah, I think they're fine with it, right? And look, now for the Whitecaps, it might get changed a little bit now that they're going on this 11-month calendar, in terms of how weather impacts it. But I think the feedback they've got from a lot of their people when they came out of the COVID, or not the COVID, sorry, the last Olympic renovation where the teams got displaced for a period of time, was that, yeah, look, we love the outdoor venue in the summer, but when we get to the fall, we want to be indoors. So I don't think that they're clamoring to move outside. I think BC Place works. Would it be great if it was smaller for both teams? Sure, it would. So would the Lions entertain conversations, whether it be with the Whitecaps, whether it be with a municipality or city in the Lower Mainland for potentially a smaller venue? Sure, they would. But I don't think they view it as necessarily a physical impediment. The stadium, that is, it's just a financial impediment right now. So. I think they're looking at those options. I just don't think it's as pressing for them.
They need...
sorry to interrupt. If you look at Winnipeg and Saskatchewan and some of those types of stadiums, like if you ever get a chance to experience them, they're outstanding. So while I think BC Place is good, the experience at some of these venues, where you get to create the big plaza areas and, where people can just watch from beer gardens and things like that. And, just the intimacy and the sight lines of those venues. I think it's awesome. I think any team in the league would want a venue like that. If you don't have one, you're looking at options, and then you've got to determine whether or not the finances work, right? Like in the NFL, you can build something like that, and the numbers make sense. It doesn't necessarily make sense in this league, right? But certainly everybody would want a facility like that, whether you're BC, Edmonton, Calgary, Montreal. I think they're all kicking the tires on the feasibility of something different.
The mission statement for BC Place is sort of what's at play here, isn't it? Because ultimately, if the Whitecaps do leave, That's a lot of blank dates, and they seem to sort of be negotiating against themselves in some way. In that, the more that they sort of stand pat as to where they go, and apparently, again, the negotiations apparently were fairly amicable between the two sides, but they seem to, without saying it expressly, empty is better for us than giving you a better deal. I mean, that's sort of not written, but that's implied, isn't it?
Yeah, it feels that way, right? And I'd be concerned. Like the Whitecaps play a lot of dates, right? And you can only have so many trade shows, and Taylor Swift isn't coming every weekend. So I'm not sure that you want to have a facility like that and have one of your two anchor tenants, and arguably your biggest anchor tenant, just in terms of triple the home dates, is the BC Lions. I just don't know how it makes a lot of business sense, especially with the exposure these two clubs bring, on the TV side and things like that. Like, I just don't think it makes a ton of sense for you to want to lose an anchor tenant. But, there's Pavco operates under different finances in terms of what they're expected to generate as a Crown corporation, right? Whether it, whether it be, union staffing and the minimums around that, and how expensive that can be, or from BC Place, they don't necessarily want to take a loss, but it doesn't make sense to me to have job loss and things of those. That type of nature that could potentially impact this venue. So it just doesn't make sense to me, especially in a year where you've invested so much in terms of trying to upgrade this facility to want one of those tenants to leave.
Well, BC Place in the spotlight here. Obviously, Levi Stadium is going to be the place to be on Sunday.
Yeah.
You're there in the Bay Area, the build-up. Off the top of your head, how many Super Bowls for you?
I think this is like 17 of the last 20 or something like that. I don't know exactly. I didn't go to COVID. I didn't go in 2010 and 2006 because the Olympics, both of those years. But I think I've done most of them since like 04 or something like that. So it's been a few, which is awesome.
And so it all gets going in earnest tonight, media night at the Shark Tank?
Yeah, the league has kind of scaled these down a little bit, right, in terms of wanting to get into that type of venue as opposed to always being outside in the football stadium. I remember, in fact, when we were in Minnesota, that they went into the baseball stadium because, it's got a retractable roof and they can cover that. So they want to get into these venues. So it's a little bit tighter to navigate, right, because there's still a lot of media. I think there's less freak show, right, at media night than there had been previously, right, with all the, brides and, you name it, right, just in terms of the theater. I think there's a little bit less of that, and now the NFL has focused so much on trying to create media night as opposed to what used to be media day, and the television production of that does make it difficult to cover this event, right? They're more difficult than it was before, just because of the tighter spaces and the fact that, right out of the gate, when it comes to the main athletes, they have their NFL Network staff that gets to kind of go in first, so it just kind of limits the time. So it's evolved over the course of the years from when it was media day outside in a football stadium on a regular basis.
Time makes you want to create storylines a little bit. A week off already for the Seahawks. Has it created more doubt around their ability to close this out, or are you still of the mind that they are as strong looking going into this game as ever?
Yeah, look, this is that exact scenario that by the time we get to Saturday, I've created a scenario in my mind as to how New England could win this game, right?
Yes, right.
Whereas and then in the end, it generally turns out the way you thought it would. And the Seahawks are better, and they're better for just so many reasons. And when you look at the Patriots, I'm sure they're going to use this as bulletin board material about how bad their schedule has been. I think it's the 10th easiest schedule since 1970, right? I mean, they have played nobody. And in the playoffs, they've played somebody, but there's always been context around their situations with, like Denver having to play a backup quarterback. So I think Drake May is going to be a really good player in this league. But overall, the Patriots haven't necessarily been tested, and they've just been escaping some of these games. And in the AFC, which is generally been thought of as the power conference, right? Like, even if a team like the Eagles won it, last season, and San Francisco's been close, it's generally been the gauntlet that is the AFC, and it just hasn't been that. And if you're, you're Buffalo or Cincinnati, you're probably beating yourself up, or Baltimore, that the one year that Mahomes and the Chiefs are out, and one of those teams that's been knocking on the door can't get in, because if the Patriots miss the playoffs next year, no one's going to bat an eye. But the Seahawks are so full value right now. I mean, from a coaching perspective, from the play of Sam Darnold at quarterback, from how good this defense is, and all the other storylines around it. This just looks to me like a complete team. You're not going to say they're unstoppable, because offensively, while they're a top 10 offense, they're not crazy explosive, right? But their defense is really good, and the offense is good enough to do their part.
All right. We got a week to count this down. I can't wait to see what the Seahawks. Is there any chance they punch him in the mouth early, like they did versus, the Broncos, and just end it early?
It's possible. It's possible. Like, if they get an early lead, I don't know that the Patriots are equipped to necessarily come back, in any kind of explosive way, because I think that's the biggest thing. People tell me about, the Rams and how they kind of created a blueprint for the Patriots. Well, the Patriots roster is not the Rams. They don't have Matthew Stafford. They don't have Puka Nacua. They don't have Devontae Adams, and they don't have Sean McVay calling the plays offensively, right? So it's like, when you look at non-Rams receivers, I think since week 10, they don't have a guy that's got over 50 yards, unless it's the Rams. So, if Seattle gets out to an early lead, to your question, the Patriots aren't coming back. So, they're capable, because we've seen that. I mean, go back to the Commanders game, and there's been a few others where Seattle just kind of jumped out like that. And Darnold has it in him to push the ball down the field. So, and he's got more than one guy he can go to. We saw it early in the last game with Rashid Shaheed catching the early deep ball. We know what Jackson Smith and Jigba can do. Cooper Kupp is more than capable. So they have those pieces to get out early. It's not necessarily how they play, because they're so run-driven. But if they choose to get greedy, it's there.
Win the toss, take the ball, just return the opening kickoff for a touchdown. Simple.
Yeah, that's pretty good scenario.
Can do that. Yeah.
Teams always, though, more than ever before, defer, because there's this thing in football about the middle eight, right? Like the last 4 minutes of the first half and the first 4 minutes of the second half, and you could create a 2-score gap in that. So teams never do that. But you're right; it would make a ton of sense if the Patriots decided to to kick off first and gave them that opportunity, because they had deferred.
We'll see what happens. Thanks for doing this. Appreciate you carving out some time for us. Enjoy the week, and we'll talk down the road.
What's the weather like in Van?
Terrible.
It's the deluge has stopped for this very moment, but it's not been.
It was miserable this morning.
Yes,
it got sunny yesterday afternoon when I left.
You always bring sunshine to
that's
to
true.
Our show,
yeah,
so.
the skies
what brings sunshine? Here's what brings sunshine, and I say this only so I can send you a bill. No Canucks for 3 weeks.
I know you'll miss them. I know you'll miss them so much.
Right, J-Pat? What will you do? We will be saying to J-Pat daily, do something.
I am heading for a beach.
Yes.
Attaboy. Where are you going?
Mexico.
Along with every other Canadian.
Exactly. Not terribly original, but it's going to fit the bill nicely.
You're not far from Santa Cruz.
Watch the game.
Go for a drive to Santa Cruz.
You can watch the game. Yeah, we'll do.
See you, Farhan.
See you guys.
Securis and Price from the Pacific Toyota Dealers Studios here at the Wall Center, built by Arbor Lee, of course. And at the Wall Center, you're all set up to be a sports fan. So they want to make sure that you turn your game nights into game weekends at the Wall Center. From puck drop to last call, everything you need is right here outside your door. Stay where the fans stay, wallcenter.com.
There were a lot of fans here on Saturday. We were doing rink-wide in studio. Happy Leaf fans coming back from the game. Lots of Leaf jerseys. People pressing up against the window here. So, this seemed
to
be
Were they teasing you?
A Leafs. Yeah, there was a was a little bit of that.
They're so mean. Honestly.
We're separated by the glass.
That's good. You were safe.
Yeah.
You heard Farhan mention TJ Lee as a possibility. He's now a certainty. The 34-year-old is the longest tenured line, and he gets one more 1-year deal. And I don't know if that alone is going to relieve Farhan's secondary worry. It doesn't sound like it, but it'll help. They're a little bit old back there and a little banged up, as he mentioned with Gary Peters, but it worked late last season, and they'll probably find somebody else, in the bushes somewhere, and try to improve with a new name, perhaps. But hey, TJ Lee is he's a veteran, and he's kind of an assistant coach back there as well. That all helps.
Right, and we saw that sort of as Ryan Phillips transitioned from playing to coaching. The one thing, though, is he gets away coming in late without the wear and tear of an entire season at this stage of his career. What does he have left in the tank to do it week in and week out?
That's a very good point. And you're right. He might just be a platoon player at this point. Maybe they say, because if you do anticipate you're going to be a Grey Cup team, like those are the weeks added on to the 18 games already. So, yeah, they might have to throttle that just a little bit. Now, we talked about the stadium stuff off the top and with Farhan, but adding to the consternation of the Vancouver Whitecaps, pair of transfer rumors as the European windows are set to close. Both of these rumors surrounding, gasp, Sebastian Berhalter. One to join Ali Ahmed in Norwich City, actually. One to Club America in Mexico. He's on his last year. We've talked about this. They need to move him or sign him. I think everybody was expecting the sign him part because they've got this money coming in off of these other transfers. We'll see which comes first. Would be a tough guy to replace on the pitch. He's been an absolute revelation, heart and soul kind of guy. And I don't know that Whitecaps fans are interested in more heartbreaking news right now, Jeff.
No, that would be an absolute blow. So definitely, certainly something to monitor here. And you're right. This is a player that, worked his way into the scene, but then became, I'm not going to say the most valuable player, but just seemed to be in the middle of everything good that the Whitecaps had going on last season.
I think about that improbable win over LAFC, down 2 men. He was red-faced and screaming while they defended. Heartbreaking. But it is a weird transfer season. Also interesting, maybe the biggest star in MLS, not named Messi, Muller, or Son, could be on the move. Tom Boger reporting that Fluminense in Brazil has taken a $15 million run at Denny Boanga at LAFC. They're still banging away, apparently, trying to get that one done, and that would be a big domino to fall in the Western Conference, as LAFC always loads up, and he's just been synonymous with that brand here in the last handful of years, so that would be something. The NFL is going to a soccer stadium near you, or not near you, actually, going back to Europe, but an interesting destination this time around. They're headed to the bastion of American football, Paris, France? What? The 80,000-seat Stade de France, which is the French national team stadium for soccer and rugby. So they're used to people being tackled there, but that would be interesting. I'm not sure I can see the French jumping through flaming tables anytime soon here, but if the goal is to find new fans, this would be a new place.
Has the NFL never been to France?
Never been to Paris is what I read, but I can't imagine they go anywhere else.
No. Yeah, that part surprises me. Just, the number of, now it's commonplace. Just accept that there are games in England.
Maybe Germany because of the American influences there.
Yeah.
Paris, France.
Will the French thumb their nose at American football? Well, the NFL's betting that they won't.
It's a big barn. That's a lot of people. It would be a spectacle to see 80,000 in Paris. We'll see how it's received. It'll be the Saints. We know that. New Orleans Saints, part of that announcement. The opponent will be announced when they go through the whole schedule stuff a little bit later in the season.
Give them the Jets.
They won't know any better. Aussie Open is done down under. And after back-to-back-to-back generational players in Federer to Nadal to Djokovic, Jeff, you're a tennis guy, is the best actually here now in Carlos Alcaraz.
7th Grand Slam title at the age of 22. He doesn't turn 23 until May. The big three cannibalized each other to some degree.
They prevented each other from getting to 50 Grand Slams.
Right.
Yes.
And, there is competition out there, Jannik Sinner and others, but Alcaraz seems to have separated himself. And 7 Grand Slam titles at the age of 22, you can see the pathway here. Credit to Djokovic at 38
That's
to
crazy
get
too.
to the final, and he took the opening set. And then I think age and Alcaraz just kind of cranked it up. And
it's a long fortnight. These Grand Slams.
So Yeah, a little bit of heat early from Djokovic, but in the end, Alcaraz wins it in 4 sets. So
youngest ever to complete the career slam as well. So again, that's sort of some context as to whether or not he's ready to be the best by the end of this career. We'll see. Health has a lot to do with it. So on the women's side, Elena Rybakina wins her second. She's got a half slam now, adding to her 2022 Wimbledon, takes down the number 1 and Aryna Sabalenka in 3 sets. And since Wimbledon last year, Rybakina has a tour best 37-6 record. And her latest triumph over Sabalenka now extends her consecutive win streak over top 10 opponents, that is, to a career best 10 matches. So she could be tracking.
I've said it before. Every time I see Sabalenka on court, I just think, how can she ever lose?
Right.
Like, she just looks like she was made in a lab to win everything. But ultimately, you got to get out there and get it done on match day. So she gets to the final, but comes up short here. So we'll see where things go on the women's side.
But she was fallible. Like, she went to a lot of tie breaks on the way here. So, like, people were taking her to the limit, but I mean, the best ultimately prevail in those sorts of scenarios, I guess. Golf from the weekend. We'll start with the local first, as Abby's Adam Hadwin came very close to a storybook start on the Corn Ferry Tour. He's trying to get back to the show. A second place finish, 2 shots back, but in the end, that's a nice start. And to me, that's maybe a PGA pro going chest out. I'm getting back there. I'm doing this.
Yeah, no, I think this is a great story, because if it goes the other way in his first start, if he's kind of questioning, what am I doing here? I don't want to be here, and struggles, maybe that sets him up for a tough go there. But for him to come out and establish himself, and I'm a guy that I've won on the PGA Tour. I belong on the PGA Tour. I have to take a step back in my career this season, but a solo second, 4 rounds in the 60s, I think that's a really nice start and should propel Adam Hadwin to get back to where he ultimately wants to be.
Yes, his former home, the PGA Tour, no Canadians were that close. AJ Ewart, a nice top 50 as he continues to...
Makes his cut again, and it's 2 cuts in a row for a young guy that's finding his way out there. Nothing wrong with making cuts and collecting paychecks.
Now, he was 18 shots back. He wasn't close, but here's the thing. He can take some comfort. Nobody was close.
What a weekend.
Justin Rose with a 7-shot win at the age of 45.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, he's tough to hate. He's a gentleman out there, great personality. Of course, burst onto the scene at 17. He's 3rd in the world now, behind Scheffler and McIlroy.
That caught me off guard when you mentioned that. I was like, really? But, I mean, he's been a model of consistency.
Yeah.
And, I mean, to lap the field, maybe he's setting signs that at 45 that he's ready to have another massive year out there. He's got the 1 U.S. Open. I know that he's come close in other majors, but certainly would love to add to the collection there. But that's a nice start to the season for him on a big golf course at Torrey Pines.
He should be a multi-major guy.
Yep.
You know, so adding a second this year would feel just about right. We should also mention Brooke Henderson with the podium finish, too. She grabs 3rd at the LPGA's Tournament of Champions, and weather shortened.
Yep.
But, that was a pretty ordinary year last year. She had the 1 spike, obviously, to get into this tournament. But I would like to see her have a more consistent season, huh?
Well, for sure. I mean, there's so much talent there.
Yeah.
Her sister is on mat leave, so she's got a new caddy this year.
Oh, maybe that shakes things up a little bit. And then there's this, Live Golf, which is called Live because those are the Roman numerals for 54. As in 54 holes, they are now a 72 hole.
They changed the name?
That's the thing. Don't make me do Roman numerals on the spot. I don't know what 72 is right off the top of my head. LXX. So Livy? No, Lexi. So. Lexi. They call it the Lexi Tour.
There you go.
Like the PGA Tour, they're at 72 holes. They're the same as the baddies now. And those golfers that have hung around the Rogue Circuit are not super pleased right now, as they were promised a reduced workload when they signed up for this whole thing. That was part of the allure. Shorts and a shorter work week. Bryson DeChambeau saying it's definitely changed away from what we had initially been told it was going to be. I'm not sure. We didn't sign up to play for 72. We'll see what happens. This is borrowed time, isn't it, this tour?
Sure. I mean, it feels like they're one more key defection from basically collapsing.
I think they push it through this year, And that's probably about it. Poll question on Friday, going way back. That feels like a generation ago. Do you want to see Nikita Tolopilo get some run? It was not close. It was 93% in favor. That's not terribly surprising here, Jeff. And since then, taken, I think, Canucks fans' hearts with a good effort versus the Leafs. Craft Beer Guy says Allvin is ready, pen ready, and the contract extension is in the works for Tolopilo. 5-year deal coming up. Ron said, I said no. Bring him along gradually. There's no rush. We don't need to shatter his confidence. That said, they should give him the next game, which ultimately was Toronto, and then play him in every third or fourth. What's your division of labor here?
I think they split on this road trip.
Yeah.
And Lankinen's going to come back from the Olympics. I mean, I don't know how much he's going to get to play for Finland, but, on the back end, quite often we see teams give guys that are away on national team duty a little bit of a rest and a break with the jet lag and everything else.
Yeah.
Like, I think Tolopilo better be ready to come firing out of the Olympic
Maybe
break
go back to
with
back.
a couple of starts there.
Yeah.
So, I was squarely in the camp that wanted to see more of him. We saw him. He was terrific. Faces, stares down Austin
period.
Matthews,
Yeah.
a penalty shot in overtime. Didn't get the win, but career high in saves. No, I think it was the right call on Saturday. I think Adam Foote definitely got that one right to go back to him. And, the more I see of him, the more I think that, hey, maybe there is an NHL goaltender there.
We followed up after that game, the game you're talking about, with another poll question on Saturday. How do you feel about tonight's game? Disappointed they lost, or near perfect tank game? And people were okay with it. 82% saying near perfect tank game.
That. I mean, there was that sentiment of, lose every other game but beat the Leafs.
Yeah.
No, didn't happen. But the Canucks didn't get the full complement of points either. So, I think it is pretty close to it was fun, and they ended up on the wrong end of the score.
Suleiman says, pretty entertaining game, even though they lost, which is good for the tank. I think you're conveniently forgetting the first 40 minutes of that hockey game, but that's okay. And K2 Stu, I feel like the kids need to play more. Letterkenny, we get it, Lekkerimaki, and Öhgren have to play, and shootout was obvious. Foote can tank our season, but not at the cost of situational play. We talked about that earlier. Everybody wants to see more of the kids. E's and O's from Friday. Jeff Merrick couldn't, and all of us couldn't remember who Dino Bravo had fought, as according to legend, an NHL player. The WWF personality. Was he in WWF? Might have been. I
think he was.
Yeah,
Definitely.
Yeah. Bravo fought a Nordique, Serge Burney, in a bar back in the 1980s, according to online sources. And Bernier did not prevail, according to said sources. He ended up deposited on top of his Corvette outside the bar.
That's a loss.
But that
take
shouldn't
the
be
L,
surprising.
though.
I
No.
would not take on the barrel-chested Dino Bravo. That's a good lesson to be learned there for Serge Bernier, pardon me. That's it for us today. You're back, though, tonight.
Yep.
Another edition of Rink Wide.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. These are a weird couple of games. We'll see.
Got the moms. We'll see if mom power.
They got the mom power. And it's actually a really good sort of
Don't wanna
smelling
disappoint
salt
Mom.
because imagine if this wasn't the mom trip. Like 2 games left before the Olympic freeze.
One in Vegas.
Like they would be mailing the lick and stamp and adhering to the envelope. So maybe they get a little bit on task as moms are watching. Rink Wide later today, 6:30 puck drop. So it might be a little bit earlier for Rink Wide. Take note of that. And we'll be back tomorrow. Jeff and I doing this again here and recapping the game as we saw it. Thanks to our guests tonight. Thanks to you for listening and watching as per usual. And don't forget to support all of our fabulous sponsors here on Sekeres and Price. Keep it local. We'll talk to you tomorrow.